One day, your heart will beat for the last time, and you probably imagine that's the end. Lights out, everything's still, that's that. But your body has other plans, because in the hours after you die, it doesn't shut down. In a strange and unsettling way, it comes alive. A hidden clock starts ticking. Chemistry you never noticed takes over. And the thing that will eventually consume you from the inside out is something you have carried with you every single day of your life. And in your very last seconds, your brain may do something nobody expected. What happens to your body right after death is far stranger and far busier than you'd ever think. Let's start at the exact moment it happens. For your entire life, your heart has done one relentless job, pushing blood, and with it, oxygen, into every one of your roughly 37 trillion cells a few times a minute without a single day off. When it stops, that delivery ends everywhere at once, and inside each of those cells, a countdown begins. Here's the thing most people never realize. Your cells don't just passively wind down. Staying alive is active work. Every cell runs microscopic pumps that burn energy around the clock just to hold the right balance of salts and water across its walls. The instant the oxygen runs out, that energy stops being made, the pumps fail, and the careful balance collapses. Water floods in, the cell begins to swell, and its own internal machinery starts to break. Your brain cells, the hungriest and most demanding in your body, are the first to go. They start failing within minutes of the last heartbeat. But here's the first surprise. Death is not a single event. It is a sequence. Different parts of you die at different speeds, and for a little while, much of your body doesn't yet know the heart has gone silent. Your skin cells, your bone cells can hold on for hours. In a very real, biological sense, you don't die all at once. You die in stages. And that raises a question stranger than it first sounds. When exactly are you dead? We picture a single instant, a flat line, a last breath, a precise moment the you switches off. But biology refuses to draw that clean line. Your heart can stop while your organs stay perfectly viable for hours, which is the entire reason transplants are possible. One person's death handing another person years of life. Individual tissues can be kept alive on a lab bench long after the person they belong to is gone. So doctors had to invent a definition, and even that has shifted over time, from the stopping of the heart to the silence of the brain. The unsettling truth underneath all of it is this: death is not a moment. It's a border you cross slowly, cell by cell, system by system, and no one, not even the scientists who study it, can point to the exact second you finished crossing. Within the first hour, the outward changes begin, and forensic scientists combine them to estimate a timeline. First, the skin pales as blood drains out of the smallest vessels near the surface, pallor mortis. Then, your temperature begins falling toward the room around you. The rate changes with body size, clothing, position, and the environment, so temperature is one clue among several, not a perfect stopwatch. Algor mortis, the cooling of death. Then gravity takes over. With no heartbeat left to move it, your blood obeys the same physics as everything else and sinks, pooling in whatever parts of you are lowest, staining that skin a deep reddish purple, while the skin pressed against the ground stays pale. Livor mortis. And after a few hours, it sets. Color fixes in place, so investigators can even tell whether a body was moved after death. A corpse, it turns out, keeps almost none of its secrets. And then, a couple of hours in, comes the one everyone knows by name. Your muscles lock. In life, they need a constant trickle of energy just to relax between movements. With that energy gone, the fibers seize and bind together, stiffening the whole body, head to toe. Rigor mortis. It creeps in over hours, peaks at around 12, holds the body rigid, and then, strangely, lets go again. After a day or two, the stiffness fades. Not because anything is healing, but because the deeper process has begun. The very tissues holding those muscles together are starting to break down. The body relaxes because it is starting to come apart. To a trained eye, those stages are a language. Temperature, stiffness, color, the pattern of pooling, all of it spelling out a timeline. A body that can no longer speak a single word is still silently telling the time. But all of that is only the surface. The real story, the one most people never hear, is happening deep inside you. And it starts with a quiet act of self-destruction. Here's the unsettling truth. The moment your cells run out of oxygen, they begin to digest themselves. While you were alive, every cell carried tiny packets of powerful enzymes sealed away in little compartments, used carefully to clean up and recycle worn-out parts. They were tools kept under lock and key. When the cell dies, those compartments rupture and the enzymes spill out. And with nothing left to control them, they turn on the very cell that was carrying them, breaking it apart from the inside. This is called autolysis, which means, quite literally, self-splitting. Multiply it by 37 trillion, and a picture emerges. Your body, with no one left at the controls, quietly, methodically beginning to take itself apart. No outside force required. The dismantling comes from within. And then comes the part that sounds almost like science fiction, except it's just ordinary biology. You were never truly alone inside your own body. Trillions of bacteria lived in your gut your entire life, helping you digest your food, riding along with you everywhere you ever went. While you were alive, your immune system kept them politely contained, patrolling the borders, holding them in their place. The moment you die, that patrol stops for good. And those same bacteria, the ones you fed at every meal, the ones that were, in a sense, part of you, spread out from your gut and begin to consume the body that housed them. Scientists have a name for this hidden community of the dead: the thanatomicrobiome. Thanatos, the Greek word for death. Read that again and let it land. The microbes that help you live are the exact same ones that will take you apart. You spend your whole life believing you are a single, unified person. In the end, biologically, you were always a crowd. And when you die, the crowd inherits what's left. As they work, these bacteria release gases, and this is what causes a body to swell and bloat in the days that follow, and what produces the unmistakable smell of decay, carried by molecules with grimly perfect names like putrescine and cadaverine. It is not pleasant, and there's no use pretending otherwise. But here's a good moment to kill a myth, because your body does not do everything the movies say. Your hair and your nails do not keep growing after death. That eerie old story is an illusion. What actually happens is that the skin dries and retracts, pulling back from the base of each hair and nail, making them look longer against a shrinking body. Nothing is growing. Everything is receding. Death doesn't add. It only takes away, slowly, and reveals what was already there. But step back from the discomfort of all this, because there is something genuinely astonishing hiding inside it. And it's the part almost nobody stops to appreciate. Your death is not the end of a story. It is the opening of an entire ecosystem. Soon after death, sometimes before the body has fully cooled, the first insects can arrive. Blowflies, drawn by chemicals the human nose may not detect, landing to lay their eggs. Different insects tend to appear as decomposition changes, though weather, access, and location can alter the sequence. Forensic scientists built an entire discipline on this, forensic entomology, because insect development becomes another clock after temperature alone is no longer enough. By identifying which creatures have arrived, how far their young have developed, and the conditions around the body, an investigator can estimate a time since death, days or even weeks later. Your body, in other words, does not simply rot. It becomes a habitat, a small, teeming world of its own, hosting a succession of life like a forest growing back after a fire. And once you see it that way, the horror quietly turns into something else. Your body, which spent decades fighting so hard to stay intact, is being gently and completely returned to the world it came from, broken down into the raw materials that will feed the soil, the plants, the next generation of living things. Nothing is destroyed, nothing is wasted. The atoms that spent a lifetime being you don't disappear. They scatter back into the great, endless recycling of everything. You do not simply vanish. You are handed back. But there's one more question, and it's the one that haunts people the most, the one you've probably been waiting for this whole time. What about your mind? What is the very last thing you experience? For a long time, science assumed the dying brain just dimmed quietly, like a lamp on a slow switch, fading gently to black. Recent research has complicated that comforting picture in a way nobody expected. In studies of dying brains, first in animals, and then, remarkably, in a rare human recording captured by accident when a patient died during a brain scan, researchers saw something extraordinary in the final moments. Not a fade, but a surge. A sudden burst of organized, high-frequency activity, the very same kind of brainwaves linked in life to intense concentration, to vivid memory, to dreaming. We have to be careful here because this is new, deeply debated, and we can never truly ask a dying brain what it was feeling. But it raises a genuinely staggering possibility, one that echoes something people have whispered for centuries, that the last act of a dying brain might not be silence at all, but a final, vivid storm, memory and awareness flaring one last time, all at once, for the end. And there's one final finding, stranger and gentler than all the rest, and it may change how you think about the last moments of someone you love. Researchers studying people in their final hours found that the auditory system may still respond to sound after the person has become unresponsive, after they can no longer move, speak, or open their eyes. That response does not prove conscious awareness, but it suggests hearing may remain functional very late. Think, really think about what that means. In those final moments, when the body has gone completely still, a familiar voice, someone saying your name, someone telling you they love you, may still be one of the last signals to reach the brain. Not proof of awareness, but a reason to keep speaking. So that is what happens to your body right after you die. Not a switch flipped into nothing. A process, quiet, precise, and astonishingly, relentlessly alive. A clock ticking down in your cooling skin. A self that dutifully takes itself apart. An invisible world of bacteria, your lifelong passengers, finally inheriting the house. A body that becomes a habitat, a forest, an ecosystem. A brain that may flare one last brilliant time before the end. And for some, a single voice reaching them in the dark. We spend our whole lives terrified of death as an ending, a sudden stop, a slammed door, a void. But your body never got that message. It doesn't stop when you die. It keeps working, keeps changing, keeps giving itself back to the world, long after the last beat of your heart. The lights don't just go out, they take their time. And one of the last signals to reach you may be the sound of someone who stayed. Nothing is as ordinary as it looks.